Camouflage is more than just a pattern. It's a science, it's an art, and it's a crucial tool for hunters. But who creates these designs and what goes into making them so effective? In this episode of the Camo Matrix, I had the honor of chatting with Joseph Skinner, founder of Veil Camo and the creative mind behind game-changing patterns like Firstlite Fusion and Cipher, TUO Verse, Pnuma Caza, and Sportsman's Warehouse Killik Summit, just to name a few. So join me for a casual conversation with Joe, a man who has inked his name in the history of how man blends into the wild.
For sure. This is fun, man. This is cool. I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, I'm already rolling on my side.
Perfect.
I think everything's good. So, what I'd like to do is just go ahead and introduce yourself, and so people know who you are and what your background is.
Oh man, this is so funny. I haven't thought about how to introduce myself in 12 years. So give me just like a half a second here. Yeah, my name is Joseph Skinner, and I'm a camouflage designer. Used to be the founder and head designer at Veil Camo, and yeah, I've been designing camo for 12 plus years now.
Yeah, quite some time. So the big thing is this, I'm really trying to introduce people to the people behind camo. But one question is how does someone get into designing camo? It's not like these are courses that are out there,
No.
or it's an aspiring career for anyone.
Yeah, man, that's a really interesting question. I got into it. Probably. I mean, every camo designer that I've talked to has had their own path into it, and a lot of it is situational and experiential, right? Like you said, outside of some select military classes at West Point and places like that, there's not really a curriculum around how to conceal oneself, right? I got into it just because I was in the Army at the time, stationed at West Point. No, I didn't take any of their concealment or camouflage theory classes or anything like that. That would have been interesting, but that's only, I don't even know if they're offering that right now to the cadets, but I know in the past they were offered there by, I want to say Lieutenant Colonel, now retired, Timothy, God, what's his last name? Timothy, anyway, we can get back to that. But I got into it. I was in the Army, and I was wearing camo for a job, and I was wearing the Army's knockoff of that pattern right behind you, which is, Marpat was designed by Hyperstealth, which was kind of based on a Danish algorithm, if I'm not mistaken. But the Army had this arbitrary set of colors that they assigned to the digital camo, and it, for the life of me, I couldn't understand why we were wearing it, because it didn't really work outside of the granite building that you see, the granite buildings that you see around West Point, or a gravel pit or something like that. It was just such a strange choice, and for it to be labeled as a universal camouflage pattern, UCP, right? It just didn't make sense to me. So I started really researching how camouflage tricks the brain and the history of camouflage, what the military has done, what has been done historically in hunting. And, the idea of concealing yourself has been around for a very, very long time, dating back to, I think there are Roman accounts of what is now modern day UK. Some of those ships were painted blue. There was like wild stuff where they were trying to conceal themselves, but I got into it. I keep rabbit holing. This is going to be how much time you have.
well, I kind of thought that after I talked with you on the phone that this may turn into something that we can go over a number of different ones, because I don't think that discussing all this stuff can really be fit into one little session.
No, it could easily be a short form, like a limited release podcast series where you just go into. I've actually chatted with my friend Kurt, who started Relv, the guy who designed this pattern, about doing that for a long time. It'd be fun. Maybe the three of us could figure out something to do along those lines. But yeah, I got into it. I was in the Army. I was wearing camo jammies, for a job, and it didn't make any sense. And at the same time, I started really getting into hunting for the first time. Didn't grow up doing it. Really had no interest, but for the first time, I really wanted to get outside, wanted to hunt my own meat, wanted to own that process, butcher my own animal, the whole thing. And I was finding the same kind of disconnect in the hunt market that I was finding in the Army camouflage situation, where a lot of it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me from just an effectiveness standpoint. And, so the Army is trying to put this granite looking pattern over in, the Middle East, and it's clearly not suited for that environment. Outside of some extremely niche situations, or when it gets dirty. That was one of the things one of my drill sergeants said. He's like, these things work great as soon as you get them dirty with all of the dirt wherever you are in theater. I was like, oh, well, it's not really, it's not really functioning as intended at that point. But, I was trying to pick a camouflage pattern for myself to wear, and I couldn't get behind any of the mimicry patterns because I was so close to the military side of things, with all of the abstract ideas and shapes and colors and things like that, and limited color palette. And trying to go full bore mimicry seemed just as limiting as picking the wrong colors and then sending that into the wrong environment. Right. And, but at the time, I didn't have the language around that. I didn't have the understanding of, why that might be the case. So I just really researched the snot out of it for a good solid year. I ended up buying ASAT from Firstlite when they still sold ASAT, because that was the only pattern that I could begrudgingly let myself wear. And then after I started tooling around with patterns, really starting to get some confidence in some of the ideas that I was arriving upon and creating these kind of proof of concepts, I cold called Firstlite, and I was like, hey, I'm designing camo. I'm in the Army. I think this could be really cool. Are you guys looking for something? And they said, as a matter of fact, your timing's great. We want our own proprietary pattern. Send us what you got. And I was like, okay. And I was talking with, who was I talking with? Wow, yeah. The coffee hasn't quite kicked in, but I sent them what I had, which was this. It really ended up looking a lot like Sitka Elevated 2 at the time.
Yeah.
But Sitka Elevated 2 was years out. And they were like, you know what? This isn't really what we're going for. We don't really want to do the digital thing. And I was like, oh, kind of bummed out. And I sat with that for a week, and I was really thinking about it. And I called him back. I was like, well, what? It was Cal. I was talking with Cal. I was like, Cal, what are you guys looking for? What do you want? Maybe I can use your ideas around, what you would like to see and what your principles are as a brand, and really purpose build something that's going to suit that, right? That's going to be an extension of what you're promising your customers and what you want to see for the next 3 to 5 years. Fast forward, they're still running with it, but that was the opening up the door to create Fusion, which was their first proprietary pattern.
Yeah. So Fusion was kind of, I guess, your biggest break into the camo market. Is that right?
It was my very first entrance into the market.
Okay. And yeah. I think I actually reviewed that one. And I think that may have been why you reached out to me at that point.
Yeah.
Just because I'm trying to break down different camos so that I can explain, when someone's looking for something, what they should be looking for, or use those ideas of color, of shape breakup to apply to the area that they're in.
Yep.
And so that's kind of why I picked, that particular pattern. And to do well, I think I've also done one of the other Veil patterns. Chaos Rush, which I'm not necessarily sure that they're running with
anymore.
No,
I don't. I'm not sure what they're going to be running with.
Yeah.
Going forward, they decided to change direction in kind of how they're structured and stuff like that. Which, timing was great. But yeah, and I wish them well. It'll be interesting to see what they do next. But yeah, Chaos Rush was fun, and that one, I just wanted to create a pattern that looked like it was just completely ripped apart aesthetically, and had all these wild color fades and all this different levels of just kind of shredding to it, but at the same time make it really blend really well in a bunch of different environments.
Yeah,
And
that one does pretty good, and well, it creates a false depth.
yeah.
It kind of confuses the viewer,
Mm.
and really that's almost what I feel like you're looking for in a hunting camo most of the time anyway.
Yeah, I would say it probably depends on what you're chasing, more than anything. That's always been a big, a big cornerstone of the way that I think about putting together concealment is like, okay, number one, what are you hunting? Number two, where? And then if you have those two, you can solve for just about anything, right? It's like you can get more, you can drill down and be more specific, like, okay, well, what part of the season, you know?
Right.
But there's a way to be able to create a pattern based on the limitations of what most people are hunting's vision, to where you can have a one color palette that's going to work for most of that season, probably at least 75% of that season.
Right, and we mentioned some, so the use of green in camo for
Yeah,
deer hunting.
sure.
This is you see it quite a bit, and what's funny is I'll knowing what I've researched
Hmm.
and looking, I'll have a couple of pieces of camo, and I'm kind of I wear so many different ones out there just because I want to kind of feel how they work in the woods when I'm using them, and I also just want to wear different ones so I know the patterns a little bit more intimately. But the funny thing is I can lay two patterns out side by side,
Hmm.
and my human brain wants me to go to the green, but I know
Yeah.
that if I'm hunting deer, they can't see that. And if the green is
Well,
too close to the brown, well, they can't see it. But if the green's too close to the brown and it's too dark, then it's
then
going to
you're,
look like the same color to them, or it's going to look
yeah,
like the
it's
same blob.
100%. It's isoluminance, it's blobbing, whatever. You can be fancy with it, or you can just, yeah, you just turn into a brown bear out there. And that's what I was seeing with so much of the mimicry that was on the scene and still on the scene. It hasn't changed a whole lot. Some some companies have decided to try and open up the patterns a little bit more, and that's cool. There's been some success, so it's good to see some of these ideas jumping across the aisle, if you want to,
Yeah.
if you want to, phrase it that way, to kind of like, you know, it's definitely impacted it. But yeah, green out there, man, it's like it's more of a tone than anything, like a tone of yellowish, because they're dichromatic, so they're deer and elk, and that whole deer family is going to see very similarly. Like caribou or a little, they're kind of in their own thing, a little bit. um, but yeah, like it's mostly just yellows and blues to an extent that make them, it would look wild to us in terms of just how saturated some of those yellows and blues would be, and then greens would just kind of be this strange in between. There's a little bit of a debate, in some of the data, whether or not they can kind of pick up on some of the greens that are kind of close, but you know we don't know because we're not deer, so we're doing the
Yeah.
best we
Yeah.
can looking at the data.
Possibly with if it had more of a blue in it, then I
Yeah,
guess the
for
green
sure.
would show up. A
But
slightly different. Yeah.
with most deer family animals, as you probably know from your own research, it movement's going to be way more important. And breakup, just like breaking up the symmetry in the human form at a scale that makes sense with your surroundings and at the distance that you are trying to hunt, is going to make way more of a difference than having the right shade of green. Or like
Oh,
it's that
absolutely.
stuff
Yeah.
still counts. But like if they can't even see that you're a threat to begin with because of how broken apart you are, I mean, and you're not moving, like I can't solve for movement. Like there's some debate on, you can solve a little bit for perception of which direction someone's going, and you can kind of, you know, do some of that stuff that was learned in like World War I, World War II, with the big giant crazy high contrast breakup patterns that they're putting on battleships. But
Yeah.
we're talking about deer, not people, and it's a completely different, not that they're stupid, it's just one of the best analogies. And I think we were chatting about this the other day on the phone, but one of the best analogies that I've ever seen was, think of it as a low resolution camera that's refreshing really, really fast.
Yeah.
We've got way more high resolution, but our refresh rate is, I mean, it's a little technical sounding, but like that image is getting processed so much faster in a deer's brain. So any little bit of movement is going to, catch their attention. And if they're seen in focus almost 360 degrees around their head, like, man, you're kind of cooked. So you're going to, don't move. Just don't move.
Yeah. Now it's and also each deer is different too. I've been in a situation where I'm like, surely it's seeing me, surely seeing me, and they don't even care. And of course, I don't know if you've ever gone. Same thing with their hearing too. One of them, one may jump to the slightest little noise, and other ones, I can sit there and clap at it and try to get it to turn, and it wouldn't even care. So it just depends on the environment that it's in.
That does not sound like a high stress area.
No, we just did when I'm doing a Euro mount for one of my friends, and I'd skinned out the head, and its ear was just jam packed with and so I'm like, there's no way this deer is picking up any noise. Both of them were just so packed.
That's wild.
But yeah, so the green. So when you're designing camo for another company, and you've essentially got a client, you're and I also, we mentioned this also, and because I used to do web applications, and we had graphics designers, and you would just, the graphics designer would design something, and they'd design a scheme, and it would go to the client, and the client would come back and say, well, we want this to change, we want this to change. And then of course the designer would almost be like a prima donna, and it would storm off like an actress that was upset. And
I fully admit to doing that in the past. In the last 12 years, that has happened a couple times, but
but they're paying the bill. They're paying the bill.
They're paying the bill, but it gets really tricky, man, when that this is going to make that end user, that hunter, more exposed, because, well, we want this light bluish gray in the pattern because Johnny in this department over here he loves it. Okay. Well, I can, that's going to reflect way more ultraviolet in low light conditions, and that is going to, deer, they see all that stuff all the time anyway. They see UV bouncing off of all kinds of stuff. You don't want it bouncing off of you and then you wiggling in the dark, and it's like, okay, I'm out of here, right? And so it's that's always the challenge is trying to understand, and that's why trying to understand what they think they want. I mean, this is the designer's folly always, right? It's like, client thinks they want this, you give them that, and they're like, we don't want that, we want this now. And trying to get to that end state, but also protect the integrity of the product and who it's serving, right? Because they want a pattern that's going to sell really well.
Oh yeah.
That's half the time, well, maybe not half the time, but a lot of the time, they don't care. They don't care if it works, which blows my mind. That was the hardest thing for me to push through most of the time, was but does it look cool? So you got to make it look cool, yes, or people aren't going to come up and touch it and feel it and imagine their success and all of that stuff. But man, I just can't bring myself to dump the integrity of what the pattern's actually supposed to do, because I've spent so much of my professional, the last decade plus, putting myself into that, to where a hunter is going to have a better chance of success because they're wearing a pattern I made versus, I don't know, somebody else. That's always the goal.
Well, and proving that to someone, that's always going to be difficult, because you're selling to a human. You're selling to somebody that has these personal preferences, and they follow others that do it. And so if you could, it would be hard to gather true accurate data as to which one really works, because it's not like you've got a large
Right.
quantity of hunters that are telling you which pattern they've got, what their environment is, what the situation was, how they
Totally.
were approached, how, what the light was. So that information really isn't there, and so it's kind of like you're really forced to go off of the studies that are out there, and then of course your own experience. But
Yes.
but then still that experience is going to have so many factors in it that you really can't narrow down exactly what those key things are that you can convince a client that this is the right design that you should be going for, versus
Absolutely.
trying to make it look cool so they can get it, so they can
Right.
sell it.
There's always some level of compromise and back and forth, and it just really comes down to, it's like, hey, is this an extension of the promise that you're making to your consumer? Is it, or is it not? Like, we gotta keep that in our sights.
Yeah.
And I've been really lucky being able to work with a lot of really great brands that, like, most of the clients that I've worked with keep that in their sites, which is really, really cool. And I'm so thankful for that. But yeah, I mean, from a design standpoint, well, yeah, I mean, it just comes back to just trying really hard to keep it in your sights.
Yeah. And so that there's also this other thing that comes up quite often on my channel is, I try to make everybody aware of all the different options that are out there for them, and I try to give
I
them
love that.
an
You're brand
unbiased.
agnostic.
I try to be unbiased. I try to let them make their own choice, but if a brand is either expensive or a brand is cheap, then you step down behind the pattern, and some of these things are printed on a UV fabric.
Yeah,
And
happens all the time.
I go in and I'll go into a store and I'll take a UV light, a true UV light, and I'll flash it on a number of them, and you'll be surprised at some of the ones that actually stand out from 10 foot away. So that's, I don't know if you ever have any kind of dealings with that, trying to get someone to not print on those types of fabrics just to save money.
It's definitely been a lot of heated discussions behind the scenes, for sure, trying to ensure that UV UV brighteners are avoided and stuff like that. And it can be tricky. It can be tricky because then we're starting to talk about margins and talking to, zoom out.
Yeah, and I think that in some cases, when they're having them made elsewhere, these fabrics may get switched on them also.
Oh yeah.
And so they get a huge shipment that they still need to sell that may have been printed on a UV fabric.
Yep, for sure. And you can get the treatments that you can wash and run your clothes through and stuff like that, but it's I mean, it helps.
Well, now
it's not a magic bullet.
I did a test.
Oh yeah, tell me about the test.
So I took some of the UV killer, the UV brightener killers, and I washed some fabric in a UV brightened detergent, actually some Sitka stuff. So I was actually sacrificing some Sitka stuff. And of course it's bright. You throw a UV light on it and it glows.
Right.
But it's going to depend upon the fabric. So
for sure,
I've got some other ones that are moisture resistant. They're something you can wear in a relatively wet condition. Basically these soft shells that are being sold. Mm-hmm. And if they were printed on UV fabric with a like a waterproofing agent to make them resist water, and you shine the light on them, they glow.
Yep.
Then you take your spray and you spray it on it, and you do it the way you're supposed to. You take a UV light to it, you put it on it. You can't see the UV. You can't see it reflect.
Okay.
Until it dries.
Oh,
and then all of a sudden it comes back.
It's right back again.
I'm
assuming
done it.
That's because of the DWR coating.
Yeah, it's got to be
It's gotta be.
So it's not necessarily soaking into it. Now, however, a fabric where this UV killer will soak into the fabric, then it's more effective. So if you've made a mistake and you've thrown something that is of more an absorbent material. You've thrown it, it's gotten washed in your regular wash, and you bring it out, and it's got UV brightener in it. And actually, just over time, that kind of wears out anyway. But if you spray that on there, then that actually sticks because it absorbs into the fabric. But
Great.
I was, somewhat shocked. I was like, well, this is, it's kind of like if it's already got UV brightener in it, then it's almost like it's snake oil. It says it on there and it works.
Depending on the yeah.
Yes, yeah, depending on the fabric that you're putting it on.
Yeah, guaranteed to work, asterisk.
Yeah.
Thanks for the PSA. Hopefully, hopefully people watching and listening will take something away.
Yeah.
At least on that. If you take anything away, save your money.
I do have a video that I put out on there where I tested it, and I tried to set it up. I'm not a scientist by any means, but I tried to set it up to where at least I could duplicate a result, from one fabric to the next, and it was interesting to see that anything that had a waterproofing agent in it, it seemed to just repel it once it dried, it came right back.
Yeah, and there's a ton of stuff on the market that's water. It's got the DWR applied.
So it's going to come down to the base fabric.
It's going to come down to the base fabric, and it's also going to come down to so if you're using, I wonder if that same repellent treatment is applied to stuff that has like seam taping, and it's like a 3-layer, it's almost like a Gore-Tex type product, right?
Yeah.
Where it is supposed to be breathable, but also, waterproof or whatever up to a certain amount. I wonder if they're still applying it. So stuff beads versus just doesn't get through that TPU membrane. I don't know. I have no idea. That's a question for someone who's actually cutting and sewing and running the supply chain and all that stuff.
Yeah. So we mentioned algorithm patterns versus that are being developed and produced by basically a calculation, then ones that are designed manually. So as far as what's your experience in either one? Have you done algorithm design patterns, and or have you done to where you're completely manually designing these patterns? And so if you got a little experience in that.
That's great. I still believe in the artistry behind designing. I really do. I understand that you can create an algorithm that's going to self-correct and create an ultimate concealment pattern based on a region and a specific time of year and a target animal. Like I want at some point in the future, if maybe I'll develop that and sell the snot out of it. Who knows? But most people that's more of like a DoD level type of application, and they're all thinking about counter thermal now. They're not thinking about visual disruption on a 3D shape to the visible spectrum. They're thinking about near infrared and thermal and all of that stuff, which that's not my forte. So I still think that the hunt market is more, and this is a very long-winded, I promise you I'm not going to rabbit hole, but it's a long-winded response to this question. The hunt market is so much more hunt, fish, and tactical. I'm not going to say like the true tactical market, but it's so based on identity. And I don't know if that's more now than it's ever been. It certainly feels that way, where it's more about who you like. This is an extension of who I believe myself to be, right? And I'm going to buy a pattern based on that rather than buy a pattern that's based on, this is solved for deer vision and this, and it's so technical and lots of science and, big words and stuff like it. It triggers fight or flight. And even the most educated people are like, it's a little much. So to try and make something algorithmic, really palatable for most people is a really hard sell. Even it could solve for so much and be the best thing since sliced bread, and they would be near invisible, right? Is it possible? Yeah, maybe. It would take a lot of R&D to get there, but I just think being able to sell it is going to be a lot harder than actually making it. But to answer your question, everything I do is hand built and algorithmically assisted. So what I do is I use fractals and so it's like fractal growth and chaos math, which I'm not a math guy. I just figured out how to make it work and how to apply those type of algorithms into distortion and pushing and pulling and growing and altering breakups, right? Breakups and color, and how to make that kind of cross-threaded into itself to where it's like my visual signature, right? And there is definitely a way to algorithmically kind of get in that ballpark. It's just I love the craft of building it and actually the artistry part of it, right? Applying the art and the science together. So that's kind of my experience is everything's done by hand, and then pieces of it are altered, and I'm jumping back and forth through the whole thing, tweaking constantly and optimizing and, virtually testing. Once you get a two-dimensional pattern on a 3D shape, everything falls out the window. You've got to start solving for light now. Right?
So how do you experiment with your patterns in the real world? You're actually going out and taking them, or hunting with them, or getting them into a small group of people.
Yeah, all of those things. It just depends. Historically, when I was with Veil, sometimes the lead times were like, oh, by the way, we need a new pattern for the next 5 years, and we needed it 2 months ago. Oh, okay. Wow. Not gonna name names, but it happens more than you would like to think. And so a lot of the last 12 years has been just making sure that I have enough experience to know what is going to work and what is not going to work, to be able to react very quickly in those situations where we've got to develop a pattern that is going to be aesthetically pleasing and, also extremely effective. But, it's in terms of testing, a lot of it is digitally printing and then taking that fabric and wrapping it around, shapes out in the actual environment. That is usually a step later than digitally testing it, right? So I had a huge library, I have to rebuild that, of environments and different lighting conditions and times of year and things like that. And so it really comes down to testing it in those environments, right, digitally, and then simulating the animal's vision, whether it's deer or whatever. Deer's, it's close to red-green colorblind that humans have called protanopia, and so you can solve for the visual acuity. It's like 20/80-ish, but they have 20/60, 20/80. It's not terrible, but you can solve for that a little bit, and then you can get very close in the ballpark on the color. And so it's just running that through a bunch of, it's like, oh, here it is at 50 yards, here it is at 10 yards, here it is at 200 yards, like rifle range, right? So it's testing all of these differences in distance and then scale and color. And a lot of times you find that you can just pull about half of the stuff that you've put in the pattern out because it's just making it just a hot mess of noise, and you just don't make it more complicated than it needs to be most of the time.
So now
unless you're turkey hunting.
Yeah, so that's what I was getting ready to ask you is when you design for turkey, how does that change? Yeah, that really should change some things.
Waterfowl are wild, man. Turkey are wild. They all see more color and greater resolution than we do, and are more sensitive to movement than we are. So I would say, like, turkey is all about matching the color and the shape in your environment as much as you possibly can. And then, of course, green comes into play, right? You have to, it just depends, and it just helps. Like, a camo pattern can do a lot for you, but it helps to kind of use some natural camouflage in those situations, if possible. If you're running and gunning and stuff like that, then you just need something that's really versatile, that's going to go in and out of trees and exposed areas and stuff like that. But yeah, if you're just going to be stationary, it's just a little different. If you're going to be up against a tree or something like that,
Yeah.
Try to go with something that kind of matches that texture. Turkey is a really good use case for mimicry, for sure. Especially if you're stationary. If you're able to be stationary and you can pick a mimicry pattern that really, really matches, like, run it. It's going to work. It's great. Don't move.
Yeah,
Don't move.
yeah. That's the biggest thing. I'm probably I'm a terrible turkey hunter. I think I like to run and gun a little bit too much, and it's basically too much is what it is.
Yeah.
I ended up moving too much, and usually I'll get spotted pretty easily, and that's because I'm out in the open, I'm out moving.
I have a lot of respect for the guys guys and gals that are super good at that style of turkey hunting. It's just, I mean, they're calling and they're moving and it's fun
fun.
to watch.
Yeah, it's fun to be part of, like, even if you don't harvest anything, it's fun to get that reaction and follow it and try to get closer to it. Yeah, I'm not a great one at it. Looking for the great camouflage is perfect.
Yeah. That makes it trickier if you're trying to run and gun. Like I said, like, you need something that's going to break you up, but also have enough texture and detail and color approximation to your environment that's going to really suit that style.
Yeah. Now this would be, and this was probably something that's also an interest of the military, would be more an adaptive camo, and I'm sure that in our future that's probably something that's going to happen.
Well, here's what I'm going to think that's going to happen in the future. That's going to be so expensive.
Oh yeah. Well, and for people that wouldn't know, an adaptive is going to be
forces,
like
sure.
Yeah, I would say for someone that doesn't know what adaptive might be, so if they could think of an octopus.
Yeah.
So something that converts into that almost a shape changing type camo, but at least something that might absolutely mimic the exact environment that you're in.
And they're gonna have to do it where it also counters near infrared and thermal at the same time. And thermal's hard because you got to have a standoff from your body, because the thermal mass, obviously, maybe not obviously, but it starts to get into most of the fabrics that mask your thermal signature. So it's got to have enough ventilation. So it could be very bulky. My friend Kurt's doing some amazing stuff along those fronts. I'm really excited to see what he's doing. His stuff's over in Ukraine right now, and it's cool.
So more military.
Cool. Yeah, he focuses primarily on the military side of stuff. It's cool. Yeah, you should talk to him, man. It's very fascinating. If there's a niche there and a cross into your market, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've tried to bring in some of the kind of a military side, but it's not something that I've got that much of my own research in. I've been trying to pull them in so that people could at least see them. I even made a fake just for fun because of how my tool worked, was the night vision, but it just it's not a true tricky. I mean, to be able to create a filter that does that is not necessarily something that, I mean, I can probably get closer and closer, but I'm not really going to be able to pick up that true night vision type light.
You might be able to more closely approximate that in something like Unreal, maybe, like the Unreal engine that they're using for TV shows, movies, and also video games, right?
Yeah.
It might be possible to be able to get there, and then you can slap camo and stuff like that. But I don't know how any of that. That's way outside my pay grade. I have no idea. Just a thought.
Yeah, it's going to be and for the.
It's a lot of squeeze for a little juice.
Yeah. So my biggest thing is just going to be trying to get it to where they these people can see all the ones that are out there, because I'm just kind of a collection of everything, and to let people see things. But as far as some people have asked me, they said maybe you should start doing these things so you can let people test how camo works. But I mean, in the grand scheme of what it is that I'm doing is relatively simple, but it's just the time that it takes to put the whole thing together. I mean, just as really designing something is relatively simple, because it's just a step-by-step process. But it's just the desire to want to sink all that time into being able to do that.
Yeah, I totally get you. I totally do. I mean, similarly, you can build with all of the advances, machine learning and and AI. It is very possible to. I say AI very carefully because I mean, it's not really AI that you would need. It's just computer vision and machine learning to be able to create a system that can assess very quickly how visible something's going to be based on a given environment. It's totally possible. It's just a lot of
Yeah.
programming, a lot of training, and a fairly hefty investment, unfortunately. I would have
Yeah.
already done
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and well, I don't know if you've played with any of the tools that are out there for
Oh,
with
yes.
AI to be able to produce some of maybe the beginnings of a pattern or the beginnings of a certain type of camo, and I've toyed with it. But what's funny is when I get it to produce something, it really just copies something else that's out there. And I think
It's, yeah.
yeah, it'll progress. It'll learn and progress as it goes time goes on. But it's most of the time it produces a mimicry pattern.
Yep, for sure. And um, I when I was with Veil, I actually hired a machine learning expert and built uh, a really interesting machine learning program that can assess a series of environments that you run into it. And we did so much training, so much data, and all this crap. But so I can take the beginnings of a camouflage pattern or a fully formed camouflage pattern in a portfolio, and I was able to then regrow it in the likeness of that environment at the scale that I wanted with this specific color that I wanted, and it was wild. And so it's this true bridge between abstract and and mimicry.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. One of the first companies to actually use a pattern that utilized that technology was Shields with the V2 pattern.
Okay.
Um, and there, I mean, it's been used. Sportsman's Warehouse. I mean, a bunch of different companies were like, yeah, cool, that's great, ship it.
So what
But
would
you can see it's like I
yeah.
want it to lean more abstract. I want it to
Oh
lean more
yeah.
mimicry. Like, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting.
So kind of speaking of those guys and patterns that are out there in different places, when
Yeah,
someone is out looking, so if someone was looking for, they've been hunting in, something, real tree that they picked up
sure.
at Walmart,
Yeah.
or moss deal they picked up at Walmart, and they're trying to step up their game. What advice would you have for somebody that was looking for a good deer hunting camo? What should they be looking for?
Well, I mean, I think that if, like I said earlier, it all comes down to breaking up your shape
Yeah.
in an effective way that doesn't stick out from your environment. There's been like it's been kind of cool recently to poo-poo on high contrast patterns, but high contrast patterns work great for deer.
Right.
They really do. They really do, and that contrast is what you want to break up your symmetry. And if you can have a little bit of environmental shapes and stuff like that's great. Are there mimicry patterns out there that kind of do that? Maybe I can't really talk to that because I've never been a huge fan. Like I've always just been abstract, especially coming out of the military. But I think that there's been a shift to where you see that in mimicry. But like step one is look at your checkbook, look at your account balance, and say, what's my budget? And just work in your budget because there are good patterns that you can get out there that are going to fit in your budget. It really comes down to break up your shape, don't be goofy with your color, and like I said, you you don't have to have green, but if your environment is very verdant and you're super early season, like it's not going to hurt to have green. But if that's your kit all season long, I would probably shy away from having a lot of green in your pattern.
Right. Yeah.
Just kind of common sense seasonal stuff. Like if it looks stupid to you, it's probably not going to work to them after a certain point. But you also have to think like, yeah, are we breaking it up? What's this look like if I squint my eyes? Do the eye squint trick. That's the oldest trick in the book. Like,
Yeah.
is it breaking it up? It's kind of like when you kick your patterns way out and then you flip on deer vision, and you're like, is it breaking up the shape? Is it blending into the surroundings? You just kind of do that. You can kind of do that in the store a little bit, but and then like get stuff that feels great, because you're going to be spending time in that. Like, you don't want stuff that's loud. You don't want stuff that's really going to be super smelly. Like, do the best you can, but like there's great brands out there. There's great patterns out there. It's just there's a level of common sense that sometimes runs counter to the marketing hype that just is we're so subjected to in the industry, right? And it's like, a lot of stuff is just they're trying to get you to buy stuff.
Oh yeah.
Whether or not it's going to work for you.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'm actually working on one thing right now where, we were talking on the phone about the ability to do real time, deer vision. But at least I'm going to have something hopefully to where. Right now, I've already got a tool where you can take a picture of your own environment and put a piece of camo on it.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to have it to where you can actually apply the deer filter to your background and to the camo. So you could actually be in the store looking at these different camos, have a picture of somewhere you've hunted.
Yep.
And see this particular brand, because I've pretty much got almost all of the patterns out there loaded up in your phone, and look at the pattern that's sitting there right in front of you and say, okay, well, this one might work better for deer vision because of the breakup that's on it, and this one may not work.
Absolutely, dude. That's so cool. Honestly, people should be using tools like yours and videos like yours to educate, right? To learn like what's going to help me. But again, it's like trying to get people like really into the idea of picking stuff based off of that type of rational mindset, rather than like, I look cool when I wear this. This is who I am. Like, okay, like this can be who you are too. You can make some really smart decisions and look cool.
Yeah. Well, and most of them are they're the pinnacle of what their camo pattern is the ones that they see on the Outdoor Channel.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not saying that those are bad, and then like the lower end is like the one that they see their the plumber showing up in, so
for sure.
And not anything bad about plumbers, because I
love plumbers.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for plumbers.
Oh yeah. And I'm actually a general contractor, to tell you the truth.
That's right. That is right.
so
that is so cool. I actually want to talk to you about not about working on my house, but I have some general contracting and service related questions offline after this that I would love to pick your brain.
Yeah, we can hit those. But yeah, it's actually because it's funny, because some people that would work for me would show up and they'd be wearing camo, and I'd be like,
sure.
Oh yeah, what are you hunting? And they actually weren't hunters. What was funny is
cabbage.
The funny thing is it just was cool to wear camo at some point, and still is.
It's so cyclical. It's so funny now. Everybody's wearing bottomland, right? Everybody's rushing to look the same and wear bottomland, and I just sit back, and it's just such a cycle that the industry goes through, because it all happened. I feel like people are just kind of worn out with all the camo wars that happened, right? Because then it was real tree and mossy oak, and like true timber's like me too, right? Like they were all kind of battling it out for who's going to be the most dominant mimicry player. And then Sid Kikuyu Firstlite like barges in, like kicks the door down from the side, and it's like, hey, guess what? There's all of this. Now it's an abstract war. And yes, I participated extremely heavily in the abstract war. And now people are just like, there's so much on the market. There's so much stuff. There's so many options. People, like, after 3 choices, as we know, you start to just like, I'm shutting down. It's too much. And I think people are going back to what is cool and retro, and they know, and it's been around forever. Truly. And that's why we're seeing all the heritage patterns taking back off. So it's
what's funny is it's almost kind of following now camo is following that cyclical cycle of regular fashion.
Yeah.
where things come back in after a while.
Yeah. Is
We're going
that
to see
what we really want to be doing?
bell bottom, patterns out in the woods.
Please no.
Yeah. So, um, so you became a hunter. I'm assuming later on in life.
I did, yeah. Yep. I was in my 20s. Was I in my 20s? I was like 29 or 30 when I started.
Yeah. And myself, I actually, I had it around me when I was younger, but then I separated from it for a long time, and then I came back to it.
Yeah.
And really it's what started this whole adventure with me and camo. But so as a hunter, so you're, let's see, what was the last pattern that you were wearing while you were hunting?
It was either Fusion or it was Flagship X.
Okay, all right. Flagship X is relatively new.
It's yeah, it's on the newer side.
Yeah.
That was an early season hunt, and it just works in the woods here in North Carolina, Western North Carolina, at that time of year because it holds on to so much green so much longer here in the Asheville area where I'm located,
Yeah.
and man, it just disappears,
Yeah.
and it really does. Didn't have a whole lot of success. Didn't really see a whole lot, but it's I ended up. It's really really funny. You got to be careful trying to do the thing that you love because it's gonna change your relationship with it significantly. So I
Oh
still
yeah.
try and get out as much as I can, but like when I started all of this, I had a little baby girl and a lot of time. Now I have three kids, and they're like, they're
Yeah.
all threatening to drive soon, and it's just like the amount of time that it takes to go successfully build your hunting season, like all the stuff that goes into it, staking it out, trying to understand the patterns of the animals that are going to be in that area and all of that. It just takes a lot of time that I haven't had ages, for ages. And I'm
Yeah.
super excited to hopefully this year get out to North New Mexico on some family land and hunt elk and it's just like, finally, you know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah. Now, so do you do Western trips often, or
No,
you don't?
no, it's been ages. And so it's been years, and my fingers are crossed. I think I might go out there with one of my buddies. Probably wear, I would say for that area, I would probably wear a pattern that I developed for the brand TUO. And that
Okay.
pattern is Verse, and it tends to work really, really well in that specific area.
All right. Yeah. And it's also, this is actually kind of how the Camo Matrix started, was my ventures out west.
Yeah.
And I was saying, okay, well, I'm going to start going to the Midwest. I'm going to start going to the Rockies. I'm going to go to the Southwest. And I was like, if I'm gonna fork out some money on camo, what's going to be the best one for me to
Right.
me to get?
You don't want to
And
waste your money for
well, I
sure.
mean, well, number one, I mean, it's just so expensive to get out there.
Yeah,
And let alone play the game too. So something for
I know.
most East Coast hunters, they don't realize how much time and effort it takes to be able to get a quality tag in these outside these non-resident locations.
Oh yeah.
So like I just now started elk hunting. This actually my first elk hunt was this past year.
Oh really?
I've been collecting points,
Yeah.
for quite some time, and I'm pure I do DIY. I'm not going to go out there and pay an outfitter just yet.
I know, man. It
But
it gets steep fast.
so I enjoy that, and I've hunted pronghorn, and I've hunted coos deer down in Arizona, but that's kind of how this whole thing started, was trying to get something that's going to work really everywhere. And the thing is it's that just isn't there's nothing that's going to be perfect for every location.
No, there never is. I mean, Fusion got really close. It really did, and that's what they wanted. They're like, give us a pattern that's going to do anything anywhere, and for Firstlite, and
Yeah.
it like it we just kind of hit the nail on the head. They were so fun to work with. They were awesome, and Yeah, I mean, there's still like it's still not perfect up in a tree. It's still not perfect, in certain locations. But man, it like talk about going a lot of places over the map. Like patterns like that um, are you love it when that happens. You really do.
Yeah, I think it's one of the popular ones. So I can, when someone uses my tool, I can see which ones that they're actually looking at, and it's usually up there in the
Oh
top
yeah,
10 of
I
ones
love it.
that gets picked. So and I keep a kind of a running log, and I post that every now and then as to which ones are kind of getting looked at the most.
Sure.
At some point, I'll re-implement a kind of a voting view to where someone can compare a couple and say, like, I like how this one worked better in this particular environment, and I like how this one
That's
worked
really
better.
cool.
And so if I can get that one, if I can get that working again, then I'll actually be able to build. And it's going to be more of a popularity contest that could be,
It could
weighed,
skew.
yeah, it could be skewed one way or the other depending on who goes there, and if someone goes in there and tries to
If you
weigh
get
it
high enough
one way.
numbers, though, if you get big enough numbers, though, like that'll just kind of those will be outliers, right? And
Yeah.
it'll be nice, and you can get a really good data set that then like you could weigh that also with price. I mean, that's a lot of
Yeah.
work. I totally get it, but you could kind of get a general idea of like price and effectiveness. And man, consumers could really benefit from something like that.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not just what they see on the gram, right, or
oh yeah,
on
yeah,
TV.
yeah. So that's one of the things I'm trying to work on right now. I got a
Cool.
lot of things that are kind of cooking for it, and unfortunately, it's just one guy that's over here doing this,
I
um,
understand.
and late into the evening all the time,
Yeah,
but but
I know. I know all about it.
but hopefully it turns into a little bit of something
Cool.
that's very useful for people, and I continue to make it a little bit better as time goes on.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I definitely have ideas. I'll share them with you offline after,
Yeah,
we'll keep the conversation going
yeah,
and ways to, you know, infotain
yeah.
for
So
sure.
what is kind of next for you right now?
Well, I am in negotiations it's totally left field. Um, I'm in negotiations on what type of relationship I'm going to have with the outdoor industry for
Yeah,
the next 3 years because, being a lead designer at Veil definitely had some restrictions, right, on what I can do for who, when, and how soon, type of things like that. All totally, like I totally get it,
yeah.
right? But so we're trying to address what that looks like going forward. I'm probably going to be starting a new company with a friend of mine, unrelated to that, like anything in the any of that market. But as soon as able, I'll definitely be um, slinging patterns for the right clients.
Okay, all right.
I'm not going to stop. I love it too much. It's like a sickness. Like I still think my best work is ahead of me, and there's still another better opportunity to solve for concealment for people who really dig it, people who really count on their gear to give them an advantage. That's always been a core passion, and something that it's going to be a hard thing for me to shed. you know
Yeah.
Kind of an
Okay.
obsession. It's always been an obsession since day one.
All right. Obsession for a lot of people and myself, and but yeah, I think this is a good one for
Love it.
a first video cast here. But
For sure, man. It's just more people need to be using Camo Matrix because it is such a great tool. It is such a great tool. And the video, it's like you can tool around with it, or you can just watch the videos on your lunch break or whatever, man. It's like if you're curious about how a pattern works in a whole litany of environments, man, like
yeah.
it's such a great thing. And I stumbled into Camo Matrix a while back, earlier on when you started, and I was just looking. I was like, okay, I wonder if there's been any reviews of this pattern. How's this, that I've made? Like, how's the market taking this, and is anything on YouTube about it? And then I stumbled into Camo Matrix. So I was like, this is fantastic.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
this needs to be utilized. So, man, good luck. I hope
Well,
I hope
I
it continues.
appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
That and let's see. I mean, there's what is it? There's 600 some videos that are out there. That but and they'll improve and more backgrounds, different things. But I think at one point, I think it was last year or the year before, I did one pattern back to back every single day, so that I could get them all out there. But then that was
Yeah.
like 14 different backgrounds. But then the more that I traveled, I would add more. So I
Yeah.
had more backgrounds because all those photos are ones that I take. And so
Yeah.
like it's like I gotta go and put 10,000 miles out there to take these
Yep.
photos so that I can get these backgrounds.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the compliment, and in the future we'll keep adding more to these.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm here for
Okay.
you. If you ever need anything, just let me know.
All right, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.